So this is part 3 of The Elephant's Child, and you remember in part 2, the elephant's child has just discovered the advantages of his long 5-foot trunk, and he's decided he's going to go off and see all his family and see if he can spank them. So here we are, part 3 of The Elephant's Child. So the elephant's child went home across Africa, frisking and whisking his trunk. And when he wanted fruit to eat, he pulled fruit down from a tree, instead of waiting for it to fall, as he used to do. And when he wanted grass, he plucked grass up from the ground, instead of going on his knees, as he used to do. When the flies bit him, he broke off the branch of a tree and used it as a fly whisk. And he made himself a new, cool, slushy, squashy mud cap whenever the sun was hot. And he felt alone walking through Africa. He sang to himself down his trunk, and the noise was louder than several brass bands. He went specially out of his way to find a broad hippopotamus. She was no relation of his, and he spanked her very hard to make sure that the bicoloured python rock snake had spoken the truth about his new trunk. The rest of the time he picked up the melon rinds that he had dropped on his way to the Limpopo, for he was a very tidy pachyderm. One dark evening he came back to all his dear families, and he coiled up his trunk and said, "Oh, as Joy said, here is a picture of the elephant child pulling a branch with his new trunk." This is the picture of the elephant's child going to pull bananas off a banana tree after he got his fine new long trunk. I don't think it's a very nice picture, but I couldn't make it any better because elephants and bananas are hard to draw. The streaky thing behind the elephant's child means squashy, smushy country somewhere in Africa. The elephant's child made most of his mud caps out of the mud that he found there. And I think it would look better if you painted the banana tree green and the elephant's child red. What do you think about that? That would be fun, wouldn't it? Back to the story. "How do you do?" And they were very glad to see him, and immediately said, "Come here and be spanked for your satiable curiosity." "Pooh," said the elephant's child. "I don't think you peoples know anything about spanking. But I do, and I'll show you." And then he uncurled his trunk and knocked 2 of his dear brothers head over heels. "Oh, bananas," said they, "where did you learn that trick? And what have you done to your nose?" "I got a new one from the crocodile on the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo River," said the elephant's child. "I asked him what he had for dinner, and he gave me this to keep." "It looks very ugly," said his hairy uncle the baboon. "It does," said the elephant's child, "but it's very useful." And he picked up his hairy uncle the baboon by one hairy leg and hove him into a hornet's nest. Then that bad elephant's child spanked all his dear families for a long time, until they were very warm and greatly astonished. He pulled out his tall ostrich aunt's tail feathers, and he caught his tall uncle the giraffe by the hind leg and dragged him through a thorn bush. And he shouted at his broad aunt the hippopotamus, and blew bubbles into her ear when she was sleeping in the water after meals. But he never let anyone touch the Kula Kula bird. At last things grew so exciting that his dear families went off one by one in a hurry to the banks of the great grey green greasy Limpopo River, all set about with fever trees, to borrow new noses from the crocodile. And when they came back, nobody spanked anybody anymore. And ever since that day, oh best beloved, all the elephants you see, besides all those that you won't, the trunks have trunks precisely like the trunk of the satiable elephant's child. Isn't that a great story?